And we give honor to the overseer of this house, Dr. McMillan. And to everyone else in their respective places, ask that you remain standing and grab your Bibles and turn with me to Acts, the 16th chapter, the 22nd through the 26th verse. And we'll also read Psalms, the 22nd chapter and the 3rd verse.
Preach the word!
Father God, use me for your glory in Jesus' name. Amen. Acts the 16th chapter, the 22nd through the 26th verse. Psalms 22 and 3. If you have it, please say amen.
Amen.
Here begins the reading of God's holy word, the New Living Translation. A mob quickly formed against Paul and Silas, and the city officials ordered them stripped and beaten with wooden rods. They were severely beaten, and then they were thrown into prison. The jailer was ordered to make sure they didn't escape. So the jailer put them into the inner dungeon and clamped their feet in the stocks. Around midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening. Suddenly, there was a massive earthquake, and the prison was shaken to its foundation. All the doors immediately flew open, and the chains of every prisoner fell off. Psalms 22 and 3 says, "But thou art holy, O thou that inhabitest the praises of Israel." You may take your seat. 1987 in Williamson County, Texas, Michael Morton found himself at the lowest point in his life. On the day after his 32nd birthday, Morton's wife was brutally murdered. Christine, his wife, was attacked and killed at their home. Morton was at work at the time. Still, the authorities suspected him. Morton was charged, ripped away from his 3-year-old son Eric, and put on trial. The prosecutor, speaking in emotional terms, laid out a graphic, depraved sexual scenario, accusing Morton of bludgeoning his wife for refusing to have sex on his birthday. No. There was no scientific evidence. There was no eyewitness. There was no murder weapon. There was no believable motive. Yet, seeking justice for Christine, the jury convicted him. He was sentenced to life in prison. Despite the accusations against him, Morton was very vocal about maintaining his innocence. Morton spent nearly 25 years in prison. His one thought was that if you just tell the truth and stick to it, the system will eventually work. He wrote letters, he told family members, he told the guards, he told the inmate, and he kept on telling them for 25 years. How does one survive such an ordeal? I submit that if you continue to praise through your trials, God will prevail. I know you haven't been falsely accused of murder, but there are some things in your life that you have to continue to praise God through. Maybe you've been lied on, lied to, cheated on, falsely accused, disappointed, betrayed, heartbroken, mistreated, taken advantage of, used. The list goes on and on. For the time that is mine, I will preach from the subject, put your praise on it. Here we have Paul and Silas, who traveled from city to city instructing the people on obedience and how to strengthen their church. They arrived to Philippi, where God had instructed them to go. Upon arrival, they journeyed down to the riverbank, the place of prayer. One day while traveling down to the river, the story tells they were met by a demon-possessed girl who began to follow them. After some time, Paul cast out the demon and all chaos broke loose. Yet in the midst of their adversity, Paul and Silas kept the faith and held on to their praise. I believe there are 3 things the Lord wants us to know from the text tonight. We must continue to praise when 1, faced with opposition, 2, stripped of your cover, and 3, placed in solitary confinement. Number 1, we must continue to praise even when faced with opposition. Verse 22a says, "And the multitude rose up against them." After Paul and Silas cast out the demon, the story tells a mob rose against them. They were minding their own business, doing the work of the Lord, and opposition arose. this directly correlates to the life of a dedicated Christian. And as our pastor has said many times, there will always be a crowd between your press and your promise. So place yourself in the text. You were focused, committed to your job, and then they announced layoffs. You were living, loving, and enjoying life, and then diagnosed with an illness or a loved one transitioned from earth to glory. Whatever your situation may be, life was good as you know it, and suddenly things drastically shifted and turned topsy-turvy. But I came to encourage you, even during those difficult moments, praise is still in order. The woman with the issue of blood is a great example for us to follow. She was human. Living every day, she was blessed to see and then plagued with an issue. One day she heard Jesus was passing through and determined to receive her healing. But before she could get to it, a crowd surrounded and blocked her path. Yet she persevered. She concluded, if I could just touch the hem of his garment. A crowd blocked her path, so she had to get down on her knees and crawl through. Does anybody have this determination of this woman? Does anybody have the determination backed by Romans 8:38 through 39 that nothing will separate you from Christ Jesus? So here she is, down on her knees, crawling through the dirty streets, making her way to her deliverance. She reaches out and touches his garment, and Jesus turns around and asks, "Who touched me?" And to seal her healing, she must open her mouth. And because she did, she was made whole. So no matter what opposition you are facing, make up in your mind that it will not hinder you from receiving or from giving God the praise he is due. 1 Thessalonians 5:18 lets us to know, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. Even when things come to obstruct your path, put your praise on it. First, you must continue to praise even when facing opposition. Secondly, we must continue to praise even when we are stripped of our cover. Verse 22b says, "Out of the city officials ordered them stripped and beaten with wooden rods." Paul and Silas were stripped of their outward covering, their material covering, but their spiritual covering, which we Christ Jesus, continue to clothe them. There are so many people proclaiming with their clothes to be Christians, proclaiming with their SNL, Facebook posts to be Christians, proclaiming with their walk and their interior aspects to be Christians. But what happens when, as with Paul and Silas, you are stripped of your covering? When you're doing your Merc purse or your Michael Kors watch or your Louis reached that level of success. Maybe you still have Payless shoes or a Kmart watch and a Walmart suit and a 1999 Toyota Camry and a constant job. But nevertheless, it is all stripped from you.
Help the people.
Can you still attend Bible study family? Can you still pray with fervency? Can you still boldly and confidently proclaim as Job did? And 121, the Lord gave and the Lord had taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. We often have such a tight grip on what we have that we hinder ourselves from receiving anything new and anything fresh. Luke 17:33, whoever tries to keep their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life will preserve it. A songwriter penned, sometimes you have to lose to win again. You hold on sometimes because of fear of the unknown, fear of dealing with the pain, fear of who might stay or who might go, fear of what they might say. My fear may have gotten me into this predicament, but I am determined to have praise that will. know it, solitary confinement is primarily utilized in prison facilities to contain and detain individuals who have caused a disturbance, initiated violence, or have attempted to cause harm to themselves. What most don't know is solitary confinement is also used as protective custody.
Come on, Faith.
There was a show on MSNBC called Lock Up. I was watching an episode one day, and a man entered the prison facility to serve a 3-year sentence. He was sentenced as a child molester. In most penitentiaries, molesters, child abusers, and pedophiles are a high target for violence due to the nature of their crime. This particular man was literally punched, kicked, and beaten within an inch of his life, less than 24 hours of him entering the facility. This man was like unto Paul and Silas, who were minding their own business and suddenly beaten for doing what they were sent to do. In the words of the inmate, he was there to serve his time, to go home and be with his family and reestablish his life. He was not gang affiliated and not of great stature to pose any threat to anyone. Little did the two men who beat him know he was 24 years old and the young lady he was dating was 17. Legally, that is considered inappropriate. They had no sexual contact. But when the young lady's father found out about his race, he took action to ensure this man would never interact with his daughter. The story was concocted, the finger was pointed, the gavel was bound. Here he stood, serving a sentence, but now lying in a hospital bed, fighting for his life. Thankfully, he recovered, and upon returning to the prison, he was placed in solitary confinement for his safety and protection. So let's return to the text. Not only were Paul and Silas stripped of their garments, they were beaten in the middle of the street in front of countless onlookers and persecutors. To add insult to injury, they were ordered to the inner dungeon. How many times have you been stripped of all you have? And to make matters worse, you are isolated. In the words of Dr. McMillan, you are cornered and alone. Not to discredit your pain or your suffering, but I challenge you to view your isolation from a different lens. Could it be God has placed you in protective custody? Could you be Jonah placed in the belly of the whale at the bottom of the ocean? Could you be Daniel placed in a den full of lions? Could you be Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego placed in the fiery furnace? All of these individuals were placed in situations of confinement, yet God never left their side. They were determined to acknowledge.
Come on, Faith.
Yes, God. Put your praise. Yes. My God.
In every circumstance of life, we must one continue to praise even when faced with opposition, 2 stripped of your cover, and 3 placed in solitary confinement. And now we come to verse 25 and 26, the hope in our text. Around midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. And the other prisoners were listening. Suddenly, there was a massive earthquake. Was shaken to its foundations. All the doors flew open and the chains of every prisoner fell off. Jesus Christ as our ultimate example can be found here in our text. Just as with Paul and Silas, Jesus faced opposition by the Jews. He was stripped and beaten in the Sanhedrin and then placed into confinement by Pontius Pilate. And yet in the midst of it all, Jesus still acknowledged God as sovereign and confidently proclaimed, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. Praise, it's a verb. It's an action word. When we praise someone, we speak well of them. We shower them with adoration. Praise requires you to do something. It requires you to speak. your behalf. Psalms 22:3 reminds us that God inhabits
the
praises of his people. He lives in, he dwells in, and he rests in the praises of his people. So I dare to believe that if I send up a praise to glorify God, he therefore sends his glory back down to my situation. Praise and worship is vital to our survival. Worship takes you through, but it's praise that brings you up and out. On October the 4th, 2011, Michael Morton was freed from prison after DNA testing proved he was indeed not a murderer. Throughout his incarceration, remember, Morton maintained his innocence. After nearly 25 years, Morton was not only released, but has since been ordered to be compensated.
Come on here, compensate me.
Conviction. Imagine if he had not said anything. Imagine if he had simply accepted the ruling. It is reported that Morton's words upon release was, "I thank God."
Come on.
It was not a capital case. I dare somebody to grab hold and praise now, because it could be worse. When Paul and Silas sang praises, their chains were broken and the foundation of the prison was destroyed. You may not be monetarily compensated as Mr. Morton, but because of your praise, God is getting ready to destroy the foundation of the very thing that tried to destroy you. All you have to do is
Put a praise on
the
it.
praise on it. I too have been faced with each of these circumstances. I faced opposition in moving to Tampa for my belongings for the advisors to tell me I couldn't move in and there was nothing that could be done. But I chose to lift my hands and release a praise because I was determined to make a change for my life. I've been stripped, lost a job, yet my choice was to praise. And within a week, I was offered another job with more pay and the hours I desired, and I've been placed in solitary confinement. I accepted the call of God to preach his gospel at the age of 14. I was confident in my decision, but I didn't fully understand why I had to give up certain things or friends.
Come on
I
now.
had no clue that God was placing me in